Okay, so hey everybody. Wow, it's Saturday, 10 a.m. here in LA, but I have the most amazing guest, and I'm just so excited that she accepted my invitation to come on. As you know, we've been all fighting for women's rights here, and when I read Force, it came across my ex, and then I saw her article in the her opinion piece in The Hill. I was like shocked that The Hill actually publish this. So that being said, we've been fighting for these poor women in the prison space and no one's been listening, but I think somehow this is a breakthrough. And I'm not going to do shout outs today. I'm not going to do any of that because I really want to get into this conversation with Forrest. So with that, thanks everybody for joining. Thanks for subscribing to the channel. Thanks for caring about these issues. Thanks for sending this to somebody who needs to see it. The more it gets out there, the more we actually bring eyes to these very insane situations that are happening. So with that, I have Forrest here, and please introduce yourself, Forrest.
Hi, yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. First of all, it is really awesome to finally, get people talking about this, at least to some extent. Yeah, I'm Forrest. I am a investigative reporter, graduate student of psychology, currently intern at the Manhattan Institute, which is new and exciting. And I actually I was involved. I'm a sort of like a recovering second wave radical feminist a bit. I was involved in the sort of like gender critical activism for a while. And thank God for those women. They're amazing. But yeah, that's a part of my history and how I came to this story. Basically, I started doing research into MCI-Framingham, which is the women's prison in Massachusetts, I think in June of 2025, or maybe a little earlier. And it was a total fluke in the sense that I really just wanted to know how many men were housed there. And I could not figure it out for the life of me. It felt like it was impossible. And, because there's so many reasons why it's really difficult to find answers to like the most simple questions about this. And one of them is like, well, first of all, like, correctional facilities are notoriously opaque. Like, it's hard to
Mm,
know what's going on inside of them in general, especially at the state level, because they're much more resistant than, federal prisons are to FOIA requests and things like that. And there's just so much misinformation and so much there's so many like contradictory claims about this particular issue of housing trans identified men in female prisons. And if you look to the federal prison systems, it looks like it's a minute problem, to be totally frank,
mhm.
because and I could be getting this wrong, but I believe in 2025 there were only around 22 trans-identified men in women's prisons in the entire federal prison system,
Wow.
which, to be fair, is double what it was the year before, but it's still a small number. So
Yeah.
it looks like a very small problem, and so I've been like frustrating myself trying to get people to understand that this is a real issue. And the response is always, well, it's a tiny issue, if that. But
Mm,
the reality is that like 85 to 95% of incarcerated people in the US are held at the state level.
mm.
So, what I found out essentially is that at MCI Framingham alone, there's a roughly equivalent number to the total number of men in the federal prison system. So this is really happening at the state level, and
Wow.
that's where it's the hardest to get information. So basically,
Wow.
yeah, and then compounding that is the fact that like most of these guys change their names after they commit their crimes, and
There you
they're
go.
put into the system under their new female name, and they're they're listed in the data aggregate as women. So if you have mugshots, and even with mugshots, it's really difficult to know who is who. So yeah, I started reaching out to women because I got really frustrated reading
Hmm.
endless pacer documents and trying to, you know, sort of like cross reference all of these various sources and media
Yeah.
articles. And eventually I was like, I can't figure this out unless I talk to people who are actually there.
That's,
And so yeah, I just started reaching out to women randomly. And then
wow.
over months, I developed relationships with, several women. To be totally honest, it was not hard
Mm,
to get them to talk to me. They were really
mm,
happy somebody was asking about this because
mm,
really nobody had. But yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell, that's kind of how I got to this issue. And then
mm,
I got obsessed with it, like a lot of people who find out about it do.
mhm, mhm.
Still haven't figured out what separates people who get obsessed with this issue from people who will like never believe it, no matter what you say. But
Great.
there's
Great
something.
point. No, it's a great point. And the article, I'm going to put a link to it in the description of this talk today. But I really just want to read this one piece, well, a little bit of this, and then we'll get back into it because I think it's so cool that you connected with the women. I've been connected. Do you know Amy? I can never pronounce her last name, but she's with the organization Women to Women, I think it is. And she,
It's Ishikawa. I actually don't know
yeah.
how to pronounce it either, but I've met her. Yeah, she's fantastic.
Oh my God, I love her. Me and her became super good friends. But I interviewed her like over a year ago because when I found out about this, I was completely blown away that nobody was talking about it. And I'm like, what? And then, like, what you just said is so profound. You're right. Like, what is the sort of divide where some people like us get like, wait, this is totally insane. And then some people just don't seem to care about it. And I always felt it to be so fascinating to me that I mean, I have a lot of my own opinion about that, but before I get into that, I just want to read this one particular. God, this whole article is so great, by the way. Like I was telling you earlier, like I just keep reading it over and over because my mind is blown away that this is happening. So, part of it goes: male offenders convicted of exactly these crimes. Okay, wait, here it goes. Are housed at MCI Farmington in Massachusetts State Women's Prison. Female inmates there, whom I have interviewed extensively as part of my research on the impact of gender ideology in custodial settings, describe the facility as a haven for sexual predators who pretend to be transgender. They all requested anonymity, fearing retaliation, both from the prison administration and the trans-identified inmates, many of whom they describe as both volatile and threatening. Just that paragraph alone, my friend, is so powerful. Anyway, you guys all have to read it because it just go. I mean, I'll quote some more stuff as we move on, but you go in to talk about how many of these trans women there, i.e. males, are sexual predators.
Yeah. Yes.
How?
And not like, like peed in a public park and got put on the sex offender registry list by accident. Sex offenders, like real sex offenders, level 3 sex offenders, serial rapists, child rapists.
Wow.
I mean, it's so. I think one of the reasons that there is such a sort of like a psychological block for a lot of people with this issue is that it sounds like it's made up. It doesn't sound like it could possibly be happening, and it is. And your reaction to that piece in the article is a direct parallel with the sort of feelings that were invoked in me throughout like the last 6 months because I was really focused on this and. You get messages like that, you have conversations like that, and there's just it engenders this really intense sense of like helplessness and frustration and indignation, and there's very little that these women, if anything, really they can do about it because they're completely cut off from the outside world. I mean, Buck, there were times where I would be talking to a woman and they would ask me to look up the criminal record of a man for them because they can't do it, and they would have a bad feeling about him, or it's like and then it would turn out, like Wayne Veronica Raymond was a designated sexually dangerous person in the Massachusetts Bridgewater Treatment Center for like 20 years and denied parole 6 times because he was manipulative and wasn't, didn't like demonstrate a level of rehabilitation that would make him safe for society. Somehow he was safe to transfer to a women's facility. But yeah, it's really astonishing how little recourse they have and how sort of immobilized they are because they can't just Google things. They can't just call their representatives, and so it's really a frustrating situation, I think, for a lot of them.
Well, that's why, first off, I'm going to call you this right now a hero, because you are doing the work that these women are serving time. Okay. Don't just like everyone get over it. I don't care what kind of idea you have about prisoners or people convicted or convicts, whatever you want to call them. These people are serving time. Okay. They're doing their time. They don't need to be put in these dangerous situations in any way, shape, or form. And I am so mad about the fact that these are women, people. These are women who already are dealing with whatever crap. Oh no, I lost my camera. That keeps happening. I don't know why. Hold on. So why don't you talk? Why are they keep being put in this situation? It's so shocking to me.
Oh God, that's a really big. That's probably one of the bigger questions. I will say what you're touching on is really important, and I think it's like a key feature of why this issue is not getting the attention it should, because it's sort of like a losing issue for both sides, or like even irrelevant issue for both sides. Like
Yeah,
on the have Democratic Party who is pro trans everything and refuse to even, admit the possibility that somebody could make a false
that's right.
identity claim.
Yeah,
But at the same time, they're the party that's supposed to care about incarcerated people. The Republican Party, like, that's not their tough on crime. They're like, throw them in there, throw away the key, lock them in, whatever.
yeah,
So either side really wants to take this up. And you're right, like these women, they're in prison because they've committed crimes. Almost every single woman incarcerated has been sexually abused, exploited, experienced male violence,
that's
typically
right.
in the
Yes,
past, which is huge. But it's not, it doesn't, it's not exculpatory. They did bad things a lot of the time. And there's no such thing as a perfect victim. Like they're
sure.
flawed to varying degrees. But
Yeah.
like you said, like they're being punished already by being put in prison and cut off from their lives. They shouldn't be punished with rape. That's not an appropriate punishment for women who break the law.
100. We wouldn't say that's okay in any other situation. You and I both know that. In any other situation, it is not okay to rape somebody. But all of a sudden now, because these women are incarcerated and they're bad women, whatever that even means, right? They are now lose all their rights. They completely lose all their rights, and now they're putting these dangerous and so many great points in your article, because what you said earlier, these men are not just normal dudes who got a traffic ticket or maybe robbed a liquor store or did something stupid and stole a car. These men are insane. They like tore their families apart. They killed. They got little kids. They just everything that I think anybody who sat for 5 minutes and read this article would be completely blown away that these men are somehow, okay, somehow they're being and skirting this whole this whole system. The system, somehow the system has been manipulated. Do you have any idea how it got, other than what you said earlier, the Democrats, which have lost their mind? I'm an old school Democrat liberal.
I
Just
was too. I'm a reformed liberal person all my life. Yeah.
me too. I'm like, wait a minute here. I cannot be part of this. This is like, I'm laughing so I don't cry, because my heart goes out to these women. And I was, I was in jail as a young woman when I was a youngster. And I was here at, Sybil Brand, which doesn't exist anymore in Los Angeles. But I remember as a young lesbian dyke, I went to jail for doing something stupid, and it was horrifying. And I actually learned my lesson being a week in there. I never went back. But so I already know it's an environment that's very enclosed, that has its own system of way of being, right? There's hierarchies, there's things, but now you stick a man who is pretending to be a woman. Oh, this is the thing I have so many questions to ask you. The thing that the thing I wanted to ask you was, okay, so one of the things was, you wrote in the article that so they stop taking the hormones once they get into the women's space.
This is one of the most frustrating articles I've ever tried to write. It's one of the most frustrating issues to report on, specifically because so much of what's going on just isn't either appropriately documented or documented at all. So it's sort of an unfalsifiable claim a lot of the time. Like, fortunately, I did develop relationships with CEOs who, you know, like literally, like they're heroes to me, because like they're put a lot on the line to get me internal documents and stuff like that would allow the Hill to run the piece, because obviously it has to pass legal vetting, and they don't want to get like sued up their ass by
Yeah.
running it.
Yeah.
But it's really difficult, because a lot of the stuff that's going on is not documented. Stuff like that you're referring to with prisoners ceasing cross-sex hormones, it's HIPAA protected, because it's technically considered medical information. So you can't send an information request and get access to that information. But to my understanding, and I've confirmed this with multiple sources, including a union representative who said the same thing, and basically anything that I've had confirmed to me through multiple independent sources who all say the same thing and don't even know each other, I take to be true. And yeah, so 2 of the 12 men in total have had sex reassignment surgery. All of the rest have intact male genitalia, every single one of the other 10. And from what I've been told, many of them yes, once they're transferred, maybe not immediately, maybe immediately, do stop taking cross-sex hormone. This one guy, I'm just gonna name him Bennett Weira because I really hate this kid. Like I really hate this kid. He's a bad kid.
Mm,
He's causing a lot of problems.
mm.
Um, but he like started growing a beard. He like took back his male name. He's not even they're not even pretending. And the thing that's incredible about Massachusetts, but you're saying like why is this happening? Every single person I've tried to debate this with who's like a liberal who may be sort of open to acknowledging that it could be a complex problem, the response is always, well, you know, of course there's extensive vetting that goes on before they allow anyone to transfer to a women's prison. They don't even have to be diagnosed with gender dysphoria in Massachusetts. All they have to do is say that they identify as a woman. I mean, some of them do receive diagnoses, and like to be honest, like all a diagnosis is you say to a professional, I identify as a woman, and they say, okay,
Right.
you have gender dysphoria. But
Yeah.
they don't have to. Under Section 32A of Mass General Law, after the 2018 Criminal Justice Reform Act was passed, under Charlie Baker, a Republican governor, weirdly, but that's neither here
Wow.
nor there. Yeah, they all they have to do is say that they feel like they're a woman inside. And I even spoke with some of them directly and asked them what that meant, and I could not get an answer.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, that's it. That's the whole criteria. That is the entire gatekeeping from start to finish.
What I mean, do you know how that is so insulting to somebody like me? You, as I'm sure you know that, 34 years into this, I went through a whole mental health care system. I was taken care of. I was an adult. Can you imagine if I decided just to like go back to? I would never, first off, be able to go back to looking like you ever. It wouldn't happen. But the fact that a man in a woman's prison who says he's a woman and then goes and starts to grow their beard and become back to masculinity immediately states this person has no gender dysphoria. That doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that one out. Yet here he is walking around. So a man, picture this, everybody. A man comes to the woman's prison dressed like a woman, whatever that is, and then decides to stop taking hormones, goes back to looking possibly like me, right? And then is just walking through the woman's and so I guess my next question to you is, I know you got really great connection with some of these women inmates. Can you sort of elaborate on what they wrote you and what they were telling you was happening?
Yeah, it definitely took. I mean, they were very happy to talk to me, but it definitely took a little time for them to trust me.
Sure.
Uh, I think that is par for the course with this kind of thing. Like most people, if they do hear from someone about something like this, they expect it to be a trans activist. They expect
Mm,
them after something specific. So it took time. And I mean, right off the bat, every single woman told me about the shower situation. That was the first thing that every single woman I talked to, even the one young woman who I was in communication with, who's very pro-trans. Interestingly, I believe one of like the very few college-educated, sort of upper middle class, more affluent women
mm,
incarcerated there.
mm.
Which I mean, it's not super relevant, but I think it's interesting that there's a whole like indoctrination campaign going on in higher education that I've been directly exposed to. But yeah, she complained about the shower situation. So basically, what happens is these guys, they have GLAD legal teams, ACLU legal teams, people who are really dedicated to making sure that they get what they want as
Mhm,
transgender prisoners.
mhm,
And everything that they say, everything that they ask for, so each one of them automatically gets a single cell, for example, which like women are really frustrated about it. I think it's a blessing in disguise because it's probably safer that way. But
sure.
there have been women who've had to vacate their cells and make room for the men. A woman with like severe mental health problems was forced to give up her accommodations. So there's that. And then there are, yeah, the shower situation. So basically, what happens is they get coached by these legal advocates who sort of verse them in like lingo, like civil rights lingo,
Mhm,
um, teach them about WPATH, and show them how to frame what their demands in that sort of language. So they say, if they're not given what they want, then it becomes like well, you're discriminating against me. And I mean, like prison administrations are very averse to litigation, and there has been some really protracted, extremely expensive litigation around this issue in
mm,
Massachusetts in particular,
mm,
which is another story too. One of the guys there sued the state, Robert Koselleck. He was one of those. I think he's the second man sent there. He actually he was there because he nearly decapitated his wife with a piano wire.
Oh my
Yeah, and
God.
abandoned her body at a shopping mall parking lot after he stripped her and posed her sexually. So yeah, he's nuts, and he won eventually. He was given a taxpayer funded sex reassignment surgery with upwards of $700,000 additional dollars in court fees. Yes, this Judge Mark L. Wolf, who I will never forget his name because I just cannot understand what he was thinking. And
Wow.
he actually recently resigned because he felt constrained by judicial limitations that prevented him from publicly criticizing the Trump administration. So he
Wow.
resigned to speak truth to power. And I just remember
Mm.
reading the sort of very self-aggrandizing article in The Atlantic, and I'm just like, dude, you inflicted Robert Koselleck on these women, and he's actually trying to get out. His legal team contacted me before I published the article asking for basically an advance copy because they wanted to make sure that it wouldn't hurt his chances of commutation. Uh,
Oh my God.
so, and he may get it because Massachusetts is really, really kind of going on a spree of releasing violent offenders right now. And
Wow.
they like to do that. So anyways, they're there. The guys have special shower times. So every day from, I think, I could be getting this wrong, but I think 7 to 7:15 a.m. and maybe 9 to 9:15 or 9:30. It's 15 minutes
Hmm.
or twice a day, where all of the women are locked in their cells during the entire shower period, and the men have exclusive access. But they're also allowed to shower with the women, which is just so mind-boggling. The women would not give a fuck at all
Yeah.
if had to be locked in their cells for that period of time, but they're terrified often. Not all of them, but almost all of them. No, actually, all of them are uncomfortable. Some of them are terrified. And
Sure.
just to avoid the showers, they're always hyper vigilant, looking around, who's next to me, who's going to come in. Because these men, again, they have intact male genitalia and they're sex offenders. And some of them are over 6 feet tall and massive. They're just guys.
With
So
erections, there's no doubt about it. And we'll get into that, but they're having erections in there, and they're
yes,
totally, it is so mind blowing. This is it's like a dark comedy on some level, but at the same time, it's actually like a horror movie because the fact that these dudes are in men's prison, and then all of a sudden they found the loophole, because you and I both know it's a loophole, that any man in a man's prison can say, I'm trans, and no one can question it. You're not allowed to question it. You just said, they can self ID, and then all of a sudden they wear a wig and maybe put something female on. Do they even have to sort of have any female
they
presence?
don't
No.
do. They don't. I mean, they don't have to because So it all comes from the sort of trans activist framework of self-identification. I'm not super steeped in queer theory, but there's this idea of
Yeah.
oh God, I'm blanking on it, but
Yeah.
first person something. They basically first person authority, excuse me, where
Mm.
they elevate the idea of the first person experience as the sort of end all and be all expert on one's identity. So anything you say is the truth. Who am I to challenge it? If I question you or push back, I'm invalidating your identity and erasing your existence or whatever. And in
Yeah.
order for that logic to hold, it has to be universally applied. There can't be any exceptions, because if you allow for exceptions, you have to, in some circumstances, you have to allow for them in every circumstance. And people who are really invested in sort of perpetuating this really rigid, sort of paralyzing cultural milieu around trans just won't allow that to happen. And so they have to take these guys at their word. And something I'm kind of obsessed with is wondering whether or not, the prison administration, for example, do they actually think that these guys are for real? Or do
No.
they know that they're being completely manipulated? And do these
Yes.
guys know that they know that they're being, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
almost like a snowball lie where it just both parties know that the other party knows that it's all bullshit, but they're forced to sort of keep up the facade for
A
however.
100%. I saw an interview back in the day when I was also just freaked out, maybe a year or two ago. I saw a guard who left the the job and totally spilled the beans on the whole thing. He's like, we know what's going on. It's disgusting. We're not allowed to say anything. The guards are not allowed to say anything. Forrest, the thing that really blows my mind is I don't understand how it got here. I know the ACLU, who I hate, who I used to support, all these organizations, Trevor Project, all of them have been captured by the trans ideology. All of them are on some level just pushing this agenda. But I guess this is just a question to you. You probably don't know the answer, like none of us seem to. But how and why, I guess in your opinion, how and why would this sort of it's a male dominated, number one. Okay, as you notice, it's all trans women pushing this agenda. Very few guys like me are part of this thing. It's very male dominated. It's very misogynistic. It's very homophobic. All of these things are very true. But I guess my question to you is, because I'm just so my mind is blown. How and who benefits from this?
Well, I mean, I think that it's overdetermined, like to borrow a Freudian sense, in the sense that there are multiple etiologies of it. Like one of them is the fact that the Democratic Party has positioned itself as the sort of custodian of the oppressed. And once you make extraordinary advances across civil rights issues, once, people are doing better in all walks of life, and there's a general sense of like tolerance and acceptance, you need a new marginalized identity to sort of elevate as your pet project. I think Tom Wolfe, the fantastic writer, journalist, called it the pet primitive, where they'll essentially pick somebody who's like going to be the mascot of the party. So there's that, and there's the fact that like Democrats have attached themselves to these positions really rigorously and thoroughly and don't know how to walk it back because of the self-ID framework we were just discussing. But there's also like the more, in my opinion, that's just kind of pathetic and frustrating. There's the more sinister aspect of it too, which I'm not an expert in by any means, like not like Mia Hughes is, but I know a good bit about like WPATH and like Harry Benjamin and John Money and the sexologist guys, the perverts.
Yeah.
And there is a debate raging right now on the internet about who is responsible for gender ideology. Is it feminists or is it the sexologists? Personally, I think it's both. So both sides hate me, but whatever. But it certainly originated with the sexologists, for sure. There were some there's some walks of academic feminism who sort of took the gender identity theory and ran with it for their own reasons. But yeah, this is something that I think is really fascinating. And also what you mentioned about CEOs is important too, but I want to come back to it. Something that's really fascinating to me is that every single judicial opinion or decision I've read that resulted in approving a request for a male transfer to MCI-Framingham based their decision by deferring exclusively to the standards of care put forth by WPATH, the expert medical organization. Even like it's been going on since before it was WPATH, so before 2007 maybe, when it changed its name.
Yes. Yeah,
and I was reading, so that guy Bennett Weir, that kid I really hate, the one who was growing a beard and has been assaulting women and COs and stuff for a while. I was reading one of his initial requests for transfer the other day, just like a handwritten note, because I don't know, I just was feeling frustrated and I wanted to see if I could crack something else. And I literally saw this request where he's like, I have to be treated like all of the other women because of WPATH. But like, that's it. And he was sent to the women's prison very shortly after. This is a kid who did not have a history of gender dysphoria, who did not claim a trans identity until he was sent back to prison after trying to escape from the cops, after like cutting off his ankle monitor and then like killed somebody in a car wreck while he was fleeing police. But he's a psychopath. I mean, COs, they refer to him as a psychopath rapist. Like the women told me that, God, this really upset me actually, that there are certain COs who have a really bad sense of humor about Bennett Weir, and they'll tell the women, like, stay away from Bennett Weir. He has a weapon, like referring to his genitals. Basically.
Yes.
So it's known by everybody. It's been reported by multiple women to the DOC, and he he goes back and forth between like general population and segregated housing, but the only real consequences he's ever faced are like loss of telephone privileges, telephone restrictions. He
Wow.
hasn't, and they actually, like, the superintendent, Ryan Donlin, he actually has the ability to transfer a man out of the prison if he's
Hmm.
proven too much of a risk to security of the staff, of the women
Hmm.
incarcerated there. And I just do not understand why they are not doing that. I don't get
They
it.
don't want lawsuits. I really do believe a lot of this comes down to possibly money, right? And they don't want to deal with the legal aspects. The question I want to ask also, if you know this, so when these dudes are in prison, since they're crazy and they've done such crazy stuff like killing their family or raping children or whatever that being done, do they get segregated in male prison? Do you know?
This is a really, I think, very overlooked and very interesting question that I've started to do some research into, but I'm still very
Yeah.
much in the stages. So, yeah, because the argument for putting them in women's prisons is that they're trans women and will be victimized in male prisons. That's the argument. Now, Koselleck, for example, he's on record as saying he was never once sexually or like violently assaulted in male prison over like 20 years. But
Mm.
the risk that he could be was so great that he had to be transferred to a women's facility. I think that, so if you look at like the statistics across the country, I think it's now 51% of men in women's prisons who say that they're transgender are sex offenders. And sex offenders are notoriously targeted in male prisons at a really disproportionate rate.
Yes.
Nobody has tried to control for that confounding variable when trying to determine how much of the violence these guys face in male prisons is attributable to having a trans identity or to the fact that they are convicted sex offenders.
Mm.
Because a lot of them don't, spend like quite a bit of time in prison before they ever transition. So there's that, which is a really important question that nobody's willing to ask.
Yeah.
And there's also the fact that a lot of these guys just say that they like nothing bad happened to them. But there are
That's
cases where it does. And in those cases, like, yeah, the answer is, in what you're suggesting, in my view, is to provide safe alternative housing in a male prison for prisoners who are vulnerable to violence, because women, it's a women's problem. I mean, excuse me, it's not a women's problem.
That's right.
Women are being treated as the solution to a male problem, a man's problem.
Again, again. I'm a female. I fought for women's rights when, I'm not a man. I look like a man. I live as a man, whatever that means. I'm pretty grounded around my transition. I am not a man, okay? And God forbid if I got something happen, I would want to go to women's prison because I'm a woman. But that being said, this is so fascinating to me because men's prison also is insane, and I know trans women who are in in men's prison. They want to, real transsexual women want to stay in men's prison, and the reason that they want to do that is because they do get treated differently there because they're a woman in the men's prison, if you understand what I'm saying. And so
That
a real, yeah,
was
that's right, they don't want to go to women's prison. They don't get treated the way saying the men look at them as a sexual object in the male prison. And so they actually get treated all totally like queens, for a lack of a better word. So this is how I also know these dudes are usually straight dudes. They are
yes.
usually, right? They're attracted to women. They have a thing for women. They might even have some weird like hate towards women, but want to get in there and mess with women. And I don't understand why people aren't well, again, I don't understand. This is all political for us. It has to be political. It has to be monetary. What you said earlier about ACLU, Trevor Project, they found a pet project and they are going to regret this so hard. What they are doing is so insane. And this is not human rights. Then not even for trans people is this human rights because it's making people hate trans people even more.
I honestly can't imagine how frustrating this moment in time must be for people who identify as trans, live as trans, who see this stuff happening and are just like, you guys are literally making things impossible for me. Because
Totally.
there's obviously a backlash effect.
Mhm.
And I mean, I always think so. There's this one woman who I'm particularly fond of. I really like her. And I talk to her frequently, and she's constantly reminding me that when I was writing this article, she's like, make sure you tell everyone that I'm a liberal. And she really wants everyone to know that she is a liberal, but the Democrats have gone too far on this. And the question they're always asking me, what these women, they're like, how is this legal? How is this allowed? And what you're describing is really important, because the men who do end up transferring by pursuing litigation, like sometimes they're just approved, sometimes they're sent there, a judge approves their transfer. It's always couched as an Eighth Amendment issue. So they're claiming that they're being denied what W. Path refers to as medically necessary gender affirming health care, and they're being subjected to cruel and unusual punishment by the Department of Correction. And so that's how they win these lawsuits. They're always Eighth Amendment lawsuits. Wow. And the thing I don't understand is, like, you cannot give somebody a right by taking it away from somebody else. And with these women, that is what's happening to them. It is an Eighth Amendment issue. They're being subjected to cruel and unusual punishment. I mean, I'm not like the biggest believer in international law, but for people who are, they should care that, like, the Nelson Mandela laws put forth by the UN's rules, not laws. It's Rule 11 that has to do with mandates about segregating men and women in prison due to the risk of sexual violence against women. And I would just think that there would be like so many progressive people who would care about this and care about.
They're scared for it. They're scared to speak up, because I know, even for me as an actual real transsexual person who's been around for a long time and done a lot of advocating for trans rights, right? That the community hates me, and they came after me because I'm speaking against this kind of nonsense. This does not help anybody. Number one. Number two, I am not going to put this situation over women's rights. Why are women's rights again historically being trampled on? Because trans women are not women. They are males, okay? I don't care how you effing identify. I don't care if you think you're a woman. You go right ahead. That's called mental disorder, okay? It's a mental disorder. So now a mental disorder, I get so mad for us, because I'm just like, it's so pretty basic. And I have a mental disorder. It's not normal for me to want to be a man or whatever. I tried to get out of it. I can't. This costume makes me feel comfortable. When I move forward in the world, everybody's pretty respectful, because I'm also honest about it. But that being said, how are mental disorders, which is transsexualism or transgender, whatever you want to call it, is a mental disorder? How is that trumping, for a lack of a better word, trumping women's rights? How?
I mean, it's a total like a mind fuck, because absolutely, unequivocally, 100%. Like, I'm in mental health. That's my field. Like, I care about mental health. I've had mental health struggles. And if I had a way of, if I had something that I could do that would make me feel extremely comfortable in the world and make me feel like authentic and like I was living the way I was intended to, I would absolutely do it. And like, someone would have to pry it out of my cold dead hands. Like, I get it. And I wouldn't want to deny anybody that. Of course. But the piece that's interesting too is that, again, like, I keep forgetting, these men don't even have to be diagnosed with gender dysphoria, which is a DSM-5 diagnosis. It is in the DSM-5. And it's both, it's a very like shape-shifting sort of mental disorder. And I'm not putting it in quotation marks because I don't think it's real. Like, I do think there are people who struggle with gender dysphoria for a multitude of reasons. I think it's often related to other mental health issues, other traumas, or not.
Yes.
But it is a very specific phenomenon. And, sometimes when they're trying to sue for their Eighth Amendment rights being violated, it's a mental illness and a medical disorder. But when, we're there, for some reason, like, they need to remind people not to pathologize them, then it's really essential that everybody knows trans is not a mental disorder. It's a perfectly natural variation of gender. And it's like, it can't be everything.
I can't be everything. Great. You're right. They want it to be. So when it doesn't suit their own narrative, they just keep changing the effing narrative, right? That's why this whole transgender nonsense has really made me have to sit with myself, Forrest. It really has. Back in the day, I would have said many different things, but as I grew old, I'm 63 now. I'm pretty, set in my ways. That being said, I really had to sit with myself and say, I can't be not I can't be disingenuous in this, and I have to just admit my biology to the world. I never had to do that before. I could just be buck and walk the world, and everybody was chill about it. Oh wow, you used to be a woman. Yeah, I changed my sex. All of that stuff, but they used it and weaponized it. I hate that word, but they did. They took all of the stuff that was the ground, sort of like the basis of what transsexualism was, and they literally twisted it for their own space. And I'm going to say this because not a lot of people are willing to say it, but I don't really care what people think about me because I've been around for a long time and I've seen a lot and I've been around a lot. A lot of these men are fetishists. They are autogonophilias. They are fetishists. They have infiltrated into the transsexual space because old school and also just regular old transsexual people don't want you to know you're transsexual. That yeah. You know what I'm saying? These men are fetishists. They are.
Yeah, they just want to live their lives as whatever sex or gender they identify as. No, 100%. And that's why I do bring up like John Money, for example. And yes. His early experiments with sex reassignment surgery with the twin boys. I don't
yes.
know. But this whole thing, like, to me, sexologists are just like the root of so many evils. Like, Kinsey, absolute monster. They're yeah. really perverse, really sort of hedonistic guys yep. who are doing an agenda that's gratifying to them. And it has had enormous influence on the world. And this is one thing I try not to go into too much because this is where my like conspiracy theorist insanity really comes out, because I'm one of those people who thinks that the world like runs on child sex trafficking and abuse.
Yeah, totally. Scary.
But also it sounds crazy.
I know, but that's what they want you to think. They want you to think it sounds crazy. That's how they get away with shit, right? They're like, oh no, that's just too crazy. That can't happen, right? That's what I think. So I think we're in alignment there.
I do think that is a reason that this has been so ascendant in mainstream culture, is that those kinds of guys, the John Moneys, the Kinseys, they do get by linking up with very, very wealthy, very powerful, connected.
This is right.
People.
Yes.
That's a piece of it. But the thing that I think is so just like, I don't know, almost like kind of hopeless. There's a lot of futility, I think, in talking about this issue for me, just because at the end of the day, like, I wrote this article and it's amazing to me that it got as many people looking at it on social media as they did. But you know that not one single media outlet in the state of Massachusetts even acknowledged it.
I'm not shocked.
Not a single one.
Wow.
They didn't mention it. And I tried to make sure that it was on their radar. Even the representative of the district that the prison is in blew off a meeting with me. They just don't care. Like, they are not interested in hearing about this. So I just don't know what is required in order to make them care.
Well, I'll tell you what, in my opinion, Forrest, what is going to matter is when somebody loses their life. When somebody loses, and you know it, and actually I could cry even saying that, but it's really at the expense of women again. And that's the thing is, and not until one woman gets either just totally destroyed in prison, because again, what we started the conversation with, people don't seem to care about incarcerated people. They think they're trash, but they don't understand everyone is in prison for different reasons, okay? And that being said, yeah, there's trash in prison, most definitely, but a lot of these women are just serving their time. They want to do it. They want to get out of that space. There's a difference between women in prison and men in prison. Most of the men in prison are kind of scary and have done pretty insane. A lot of women just maybe did, but there's bad women. Let's not say that there's not. But they shouldn't have to be subjected to this type of behavior. And it is, I'm going to go back to, it's going to take something very drastic. And then everyone's going to go, oh, we didn't realize. And then we're going to show them, really? We've all been talking about this, but everyone keeps putting their head. It needs to get to the Trump administration somehow. It needs to get really voiced in a higher political space, don't you think?
I do. I was trying really hard. Well, not really hard. I'm not like a really great at social media kind of person. I'm like a weird, but I was trying to some extent to bring it to Harmeet Dillon's attention, because she's been really involved with the transitioner lawsuits in the past. And it just so happened, it coincided with like a week where she just kept posting pictures of all these hats that she was knitting. Wow. And I just found myself getting so resentful of like,
yeah.
why are you like, how do you have time to do that? Like, this is more important. But
Yeah.
I bring it to their radar. I mean, I have a screenshot of a message from a woman who I mentioned briefly in the article who was sexually assaulted by that Bennett Weira kid. They put her in basically solitary confinement for 40 days, quite literally 40 days. And I had a message from her that was like asking me if I could try to find a way to help her get Trump's attention. So I was hoping that would get Trump's attention, but it didn't.
No, we all have to work together. You know, I have been making lots of great. I really, after this interview, I'd love to see what other contacts I have to get you, because of course none of the liberal media touched you. I watch you, and I saw you, like, I saw people really backing you. A lot of people on X were pushing your, people with bigger followings than me were really pushing your article. And nobody from CNN, MSNBC, none of that. And that's why I've lost faith. I've lost faith in all of that. And like, did you get on Fox News? Have you been on there to talk about this?
On Newsmax before, and I even emailed the same contact who invited me because I was on Newsmax talking about a different piece that I co-authored on higher education.
Yeah,
And
great.
I would be interested, but I mean, yeah, I don't know. It was a disillusioning week for me, and I don't like to say that because it sounds like, oh, I
Well,
didn't have glory, but really, I just thought that they would be forced to at least acknowledge. By they, I mean the state representatives. I thought they would be forced to at least acknowledge it because we got the
nope.
Elon, and I was like, okay, well, that means millions of people have seen this, and
Yeah,
it's out there, and they're
yeah.
actually choosing to ignore it.
No, it's easy to do this because you can go to something else. And, the thing is that I think, like I keep going back to, it's going to take some woman in that prison space to be either offed or some damage is going to be, and for the media to finally pick it up. But they're also going to spin that as, a transphobic attack or some kind of other nonsense. And also, I could think of Megyn Kelly. I think she would just be really all over this because she's all about women's and children's rights.
I did write to her. I didn't hear back, but that's not surprising.
Okay, well, I'm going to do what I could do. I actually have a connection that I can help you with. But anyway, that being here and there, I really want to get to a couple. So as you were doing this investigation and you reached out to some of the women, and they had to, I get that they had to feel you out and blah blah blah. Could you say about how many women you got to have a good connection to and what they were writing you in the letters?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say I lost track at this point. I've talked
Yeah.
to probably between like 15 to 20 women, but I've had
Wow.
good, strong relationships that have lasted for months with four and a half or five of them.
Great. Great.
Yeah,
Gr-
and it's good because I can get a variety of perspectives. I know I'm not just receiving information from, like one motivated individual,
yeah.
but they've gotten a lot of flack for talking to me from what I've heard from COs that basically became informants. The the level of monitoring that the prison was doing of the communications between me and these women, they classified these women as like like a high risk. They put them on
Wow.
like high risk sort of security rating, and they were monitoring everything that went in and out of the prison.
Wow.
It's tough. So yeah, what are they writing me? They've written me all kinds of things. I mean, a lot of like, what the fuck is happening? I can't believe this is real. How is this real? A
Yeah.
lot of exclamation points. They've also just
Yeah.
shared stuff about their lives, like separately from this,
Hmm.
which is helpful to sort of like humanize their situation. And yeah, basically, I mean, one woman who again I'm very fond of, she is really planning to work on this when she is released because her sentence isn't very long. And I put her in touch with Amy. I think she's gonna reach out to her. So that's really,
Great.
she really, really wants to do something about it. But I've watched, you know what, like Buck, I think I learned a lot. Uh, it's not so much that I learned a lot because I already knew these things theoretically, but I never saw like female socialization tendencies play out so much in
Mm.
time. Many of them spent sort of apologizing for being mean by complaining about this. So much of it was like, for a long time, and then they kind of got over it, and because when they realized I was like, fuck these guys. Not, I didn't literally say that, but like they kind of And but leading up to that, and even after, sometimes there would be like, I feel bad, like I want to be understanding, I want to be compassionate. There's this one letter I received where this woman was describing an incident that occurred with this guy Kenneth Hunt, who raped and murdered two women, one of them his cousin, and he is crazy, and he sexually assaulted two of his housemates in the prison and was sent to segregated housing for 6 months. There was a whole investigation. And because he's crazy, he's absolutely horrific, and he's like sexually harassing them all the time, like really like verbal harassment.
Yeah.
But she was writing about him, and she was specifically describing the incident where he assaulted his housemates, and it was a handwritten letter because those are sometimes less monitored, and she kept writing the word she and then crossing it out and writing he. So it's just like I'm watching in real time, she's becoming less apologetic for how she feels. It was very real, where it's like, and she even had these insights herself. Like, I feel like she was saying things like, I feel like I've been raised to put men above me, to put my needs below other people's. And now, being sort of demoted again. And basically paraphrasing what she said, but like, I am sick of trying to be nice. Like, they don't care about us.
What you're saying is so profound, because you're right. Again, it comes to that socialization of women and men. I'm 63. I've lived 30 years as a woman. I am, but you know what I mean? Physically as a woman, and then 30 years pretty much more as a man. And I can tell you, I see things in such a way that not many people have been able to see. I get treated differently. When people don't know about me, they just think I'm some dude, right? And I get treated and talked to and everything. And I'm just thinking, wow, this is so, I've entered this secret man club, right? And you get talked to totally differently than when you're a woman. So, and then living as a masculine butch woman, I also dealt with a lot of pushback and all kinds of bullshit from society. So what you're saying is really, really important, because again, women are second class citizens, period. I don't care what anybody says, but all of a sudden now these men who want to be women, and again, people, who cares if you want to be a woman and you go about it, but you would think that they would have more respect. This is how I can call them out, and I think that they're full of shit, because if they really wanted to be a woman, don't you think that they would want to have respect for women and sort of not walk on women's rights?
I think if they wanted to be women, they probably wouldn't have like raped and murdered women. That's my take.
There you go. Bam.
It's kind of just crazy to think about, like Tish Hyman's experience with Alexis, whatever, I forget the person's name, in the restroom at the gym, and it was revealed that he had beat the shit out of his ex-girlfriend or ex-fiance, and like broke her jaw, and then took her name. And that, I heard that repeated elsewhere, this thing of like harming or even killing a woman and then taking her name. And it's extremely disturbing and indicative of a very complex psychopathology. But also what you're describing, like, I want to talk about that for an hour, because it is like you have like an extremely unique vantage point, and that's fascinating to have both of those experiences to sort of contrast with one another.
Well, it's why it's really important, I think, voices like mine, not just mine, but older transsexuals, or even transgender or transsexual women who are based in reality, which is their biology. They don't walk over women. They will, you have to learn as a transsexual. You really have to learn to navigate the world. It's not about the world navigating me. It's about me navigating the world, and that is a real part of becoming or being in a transsexual space that these younger or new people are not being taught. They're taught that they have privilege. They're taught that the whole world has to come to them. And it's an actual mental disorder. And I really get so mad when people in this new community say things like this, because it opens the door for these predator weirdos in the prison space to there's it's not just a loophole, it is huge. Any man can say they're a woman now and be transferred. That statement alone should blow everybody's mind.
I think it's Chowchilla prison, but I could be getting it wrong. I think this was a stat that from Amy, from Women to Women, and I don't remember the exact number, but it's estimated that there are like 40 something men at that women's prison. And sometimes I think about it, I was like, what is going to be the incentive for seeking placement in a female facility when they're majority male? Like, what's going to happen then?
That's a great point, because it's going to happen. It is, if we don't put it into this,
it's also so rapidly.
so rapidly. Of course it is. These dudes aren't stupid. You don't get in prison because you're a good person, right? You're in prison because you manipulate, you steal, lie, cheat, right? All the above. And so you figure out how to manipulate the system in prison. But if there's this many transgender women, how come there's not this many transgender men, i.e., women becoming men? How come?
This was something that wasn't really on my radar until I started this investigation. And the answer is that there are, I mean, I don't know if they're exactly comparable, but there are quite a few women in MCI-Framingham who identify as men. We just don't hear about them because they don't request transfer to men's facilities ever, because they would be killed within 24 hours. And something really fascinating to me, and I think you might find this interesting. I've been speaking with a former female CEO who had gone publicly with her story a while ago, and she reached out after the Hill article, and I'm considering writing a piece on just the experience of female CEOs with the policies in prison, because they're all forced to strip search these men if they request being searched by someone with their consistent gender identity. And I was given a document. An internal document was slipped to me showing in a list of, I forget what they called it, but like trans and gender nonconforming inmates, so men and women. And it showed their sex that they prefer to be referred to as, their name, like their unit, their DOC ID number, and then the sex of the person who, the sex of the female officers who they had requested to exclusively search them. So every single man requested and was approved for being strip searched exclusively by women. And guess what? So was every single female who identified as a man. Every single one.
Wow. Just wow. These talking points you're saying are so powerful. It proves, first off, it proves biology. Secondly, it proves women and men are different in these spaces. And thirdly, it totally exposes the grift of these transgender, i.e., transgender women, men in men's prison. They are straight men who are also they're sexualizing women. They are fully sexualizing women.
They're getting off on, I mean, a significant amount of people who are rapists are control rapists. They're getting on wielding that kind of power over women. I mean, this particular woman, she literally submitted a request waived of this mandate because she had previously been sexually assaulted and had a PTSD diagnosis, and it was denied, and she was demoted like the next day or something like that.
Wow.
So it's crazy. I will say though, like, though it does sound like the trans-identified female inmates they do present their own problems. Like, they are on testosterone a lot of the time, and they're increasingly violent and have even like physically attacked COs. One woman that I'm in contact with has described it as them sort of, it's actually very Freudian, like a sort of like repetition compulsion of like reenacting domestic abuse and violence experienced in the past. There's some COs who are really upset just by seeing this happen, because one in particular, like in their view, these women are very mentally ill and really need help, and instead they're being given, I mean, off-label doses of testosterone.
Oh God, it's
violent and depressed and aggressive and like crazy. So,
and not going through mental health, because like you said earlier, you can self-ID as trans and nobody can stop you. So now they're getting hormones, and yes, testosterone can make you have a much more aggressive space. So I don't understand. So if now the growing population, okay, so butch women have always been in prison, and they're very butch and they're very male identified, and that's been around forever. Just like, but they didn't call themselves trans. They were just, taking on male names and being very masculine and butch. But now we introduced this trans identified thing. But my question, which you answered, was why are they not being transferred to men's prison? Because they know damn well they'll be completely slaughtered there. But I guess
I don't think it would ever be approved, even if they did request it.
Oh, that's interesting. You don't, so, wow.
But I mean, they would be, if Mass DOC, if any Department of Corrections were to approve that, they would be liable for murder, because there is no way the women would survive that. There's just no way.
So then they know. So this is the whole thing, which is also a piece of the puzzle. They know, oh my God, Forrest, they know that if they put women and men who identify as men, they'll be slaughtered. So they know that now biology has part of this whole equation, yet they're willing to put men who would have slaughtered the women. Oh my God, it's like who would have slaughtered the women who identified as men in men prison, but they're willing to take these same men and put them in women's prison because the whole thing is completely insane. So
Thing. Yeah, I mean, when I had the exact same
what?
reaction that you did to that strip search assignment list, where I was like, oh, they are all acknowledging like the sort of immutable realities associated with biological sex differences. Like
Yes.
trans identified men retain male criminal offending patterns. They actually have a higher in prison. They have a higher chance of being incarcerated
Yeah,
for much higher. But in general, they retain like male criminality patterns, male offending patterns. Those things don't go away just
that's
because you
right.
change how you identify. And the thing that is so frustrating about working on this, or even just thinking about it to some extent, is that people seem so averse to providing any kind of solutions, even if they're compromises that would allow for everybody's safety. Like that in
That's right.
California last year, this like really gets me. State Senator Shannon Grove, she's a Republican. She worked with Amy, and
Hmm.
they put together a bill. It was SB 311, I believe.
Hmm.
And what it would do is it would not stop transferring male inmates to female prisons. All it would do was require that they were separated in intimate spaces. So sleeping,
Yeah.
showering, that's
Okay.
it. Programming
Okay.
would side by side.
Okay.
They would eat together, they would live together, all those things.
Hmm.
And Democrats voted against it. It was I think there were 5 Democrats and 1 Republican on the panel, one on the
Disgusting.
committee. The Republican voted in favor. 4 Democrats voted against it. One was absent. And then, as like a Hail Mary, they tried to compromise Senator Grove and Amy. And we're like, okay, well, what if this only applies to convicted registered sex offenders? And they fucking said no. They
It,
said, yeah.
so trans trumps everything. It literally, you could be the most insane serial killer, right, in the whole wide world, and if you said you were trans, you get all this treatment done. This is where we need to get this information to the world. These people are complete grifters, and they're duping the system at the expense of women's safety. It is so up. So if there's so many trans people now, what you said I think earlier was now there's like so many more. There's like double what there used to be. I forgot the number, but that being said, let's just say there's 50 trans women, right, in women's prison. Why don't they
Much
create
more than that. Yeah.
a segregated space that says, okay, because you're trans and you're so special and your needs are so special, you cannot, we've proven they cannot coexist in the women's prison. We've proven it, right? But no one seems to want to listen to it. Why don't they just take a unit right there and create why don't they do that?
Yeah. So this is something I've become increasingly interested in policy, largely because of the
Mm,
sort of gender stuff and
mm,
how it interacts with women's rights.
mm.
And this is something I want to work on a piece about this for Manhattan Institute, I think, because something that I've realized about the self ID housing in prisons is that there are multiple policies that exist at different levels of government and organizational structures
Uh,
that all have conflicting decrees in terms of how you sort of go about doing this. So there's PREA, which is the Prison Rape Elimination Act, which was expanded and signed under Obama.
mm,
And it included all of these updates about how you have to interact with male prisoners or excuse me, with any prisoner who identifies as transgender. And one of the things that it stipulates is that you cannot segregate any inmates based on their gender identity. But then at the time, I think I can't remember if it's PREA or if it's the Federal Prison Guidebook, but one of the two quite literally says you cannot force an officer to strip search somebody of the opposite sex against their
mm.
will.
Yeah.
So, which are you following? I mean, like, there's now the executive order that President Trump signed, which, purportedly is designed to get male offenders out of female prisons, but
Hmm.
his administration hasn't, I don't even know if they are aware that the federal, I think it's called the BOP, like Federal Bureau of Prisons,
Hmm.
transgender prisoner guidebook, I think, or transgender offender manual. Yeah,
What?
differs to WPATH's expertise still in print. So
WPATH is not, WPATH is a
yeah,
self-appointed organization. Okay. I despise WPATH was started back in the day when I was transitioning a million years ago for us, just for us to sort of have our own space and understand our needs and to talk to each other and to help us get better health care and all the things that should be for a transsexual person. But then it got taken over by, I told you, the fetishist wingnut people who want to make child maps, right? I'm sure you know about maps, changing the P word to maps and infiltrating and adding all of this stuff has gone so off the rails. It's so insane to me that this is all related to transgenderism. And it just, what you said earlier, also the sociologists or whatever they are, the sexual,
psychologists.
they're insane. They are
absolutely insane. They're absolutely insane. And there's been such like a revisionist whitewashing of their legacies. Like Kinsey, for example.
Yes.
I don't know why he's like heralded as this hero. He literally like in his experiments, there were, I mean, he doesn't exactly state it blatantly, but there are experiments that he conducted that literally lists like the ages of infants and then like a time and then like whether or not they orgasmed. Like these are really bad people. And I do think that's so much of this sort of moral subversion that's come from like the emphasis of postmodernism, like the breakdown of categories.
Yes.
I do think a lot of it is intended to sort of get us, and this isn't unprecedented. The 70s are kind of coming back around in a lot of ways with the pedophilia stuff. But
oh, totally.
It again, yeah.
But it's not the same because now we have social media, which literally amplifies on. They're all, so I don't know, but mostly I sit here with people like you and all this because I care about the young generation, and the young generation are being completely duped and destroyed, as well as women. So I sit here for women and I sit here for young people, because young people, and when you say a 10-year-old is trans, I just want to barf all over the place, because first off, trans is a mental disorder you should try to get people out of. And as somebody who deals with mental health, you understand what I'm saying. This should be the last resort that an adult can make later in their life. But the fact that they would start, so everything you're saying is literally is on some level, it's the paved road that's leading to these crazy men in prisons, right? Saying, well, I'm trans now and I can now identify. There's no way this can last. In my opinion, there's no way. It's going to come to something drastic.
I mean, so like the idea of a zombie fact, where there's like an idea, like a fact that goes around that's false and it's debunked, but it's just like so pervasive that it lingers. That's what's happening with WPATH, and I don't understand it because like I've read the WPATH files, the information, the internal documents that were not leaked, but that were revealed through like the Alabama lawsuit. And it is beyond shocking. Like the stuff with Richard Levine pressuring them to age minimums, talking about performing sex reassignment surgeries on like homeless people and people with like,
oh my god,
schizophrenia. They put like in the standards of care 8, they literally like link to a platform that is basically like castration fetish fan fiction.
Oh my god,
children. And it's absolutely nuts that this
nuts. They are after the kids, and the thing is that a lot of so I wonder why would all these I lost pretty much all my trans friends because they don't, and I'm like, wow, really? Do you actually care about what's going on here? I don't care. I don't live as a trans person. It's what I try to keep telling you. I'm not a trans identified female. I don't identify as a male, but I'm a woman. A whole different level. And it's why I separate transgender from transsexualism. Like I understand the disorder. I understand all of it. That being said, I don't care if someone calls me she. I actually don't care. It's kind of funny to me. But that being said, I wanted to say before because we're getting here to the end of this, but to the circular reasoning, I think that is one of the things that keeps happening here, as well as cost sunk fallacy, right? A lot of people put so much into this that and I do believe that that's what's happened a lot with the transgender thing, that people just put so much of their energy into it that they're too embarrassed to sort of back out of it, right?
Energy into it. They sometimes put their children's health into it, their young children. Sometimes they chemically castrated their children. Sometimes they gave their children bone density problems for life, and they're walking with a walking cane at age of 20. I got into learning about the sort of gender stuff largely because of that, because I have a family member, a young family
Mm,
member who was
mm,
very young when it started, but who was roped into this, and I just
mm.
didn't understand it. And yeah, it's really distressing because the whole the whole storyline that, well, there's more tolerance towards trans identity now, which is why they've exploded over the last 10 years.
No,
And it's obviously not true. Like,
no.
all of a sudden, tons of adolescent girls who were sexually abused as children are identifying as transgender. Like gender dysphoria was classically presented typically in young males who, like,
Yes.
85 to 90 something percent of them would grow out of it after
Yep.
adolescence if not medicalized. And somehow we got to a point where, yeah, like literally studying mental health and psychology and stuff, it's like I could be at risk of losing my license if I refuse to recommend like a traumatized child for
I know.
medicalization. And it's so staggering. Like it's hard
It
to sort of
is.
comprehend it.
That's why it's important for people like you to be part of this, and you're not trans, which makes it even more powerful, but you care about these young kids, because we've got to get this and also how they've completely co-opted therapy, mental health, what you just said. Like, I've interviewed therapists who had to leave because they said, no, if I don't affirm the child is 15 and you're affirming that what is coming out of their mouth is normal, that's not therapy, that's indoctrination. That is totally different,
Therapy
right?
therapy was never supposed to be about, one, making people feel good all the time, and two, agreeing with everything they say. It's like
That's
completely
right.
to the most like established tenets of effective best practice techniques, which are
I
like
know.
cognitive reframing, Socratic
Yes.
question,
Yeah.
not being like mean or nasty, but like challenging.
No. I mean, the whole reason I did transition was because I had a mental health care doctor who cared about me. And it took 3 years of understanding, why can't you just be a butch woman? Why can't you just live this way at the age of 30, right? So I really did do a lot of deep diving back in the day and realized that I wanted to take this situation that didn't even exist, right? Like, I was really one of the very first people to but it changed my life. I got sober. I got all the things I needed. I have an amazing life. I've moved forward in the world. And that, to me, I would want to think that the transgender community would want representations like that, not representations like these men in prison who are going and assaulting women in women's prison because they think, or they're I don't even think they think they're women, right? They're just saying they're women.
I don't think they even believe it.
No, I don't. Not in any
I mean,
way. So, yeah.
once in a while, but like, who knows? I mean, you can come to believe something too if you like lie enough over time.
Exactly. You can make yourself you can totally make yourself believe, and then try doing that to a young person. Of course you can talk a young person into believing they can change their sex, right? And what's going to happen when all these kids grow up and realize that, their parents gave them puberty blockers, and all of a sudden they're just like, "Oh, actually I'm not a dude, and like I still have a vagina, and like all the dudes at school are laughing at me." And it's going to cause it's so sad. It's just so
It's
sad for us.
I would love to sort of, not as my entire practice, but as part of of clinical practice, work with kids who find themselves in that situation as adults, because it's really really distressing to think about. But I mean, hopefully it's not worse than that. Hopefully
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
intact enough that they can find a way to come to terms with it and move on.
It's so sad. We need people like you to have
I
these
would I
kids.
would have been like told I was gender dysphoric, because the thing is, like,
Yeah.
when you define transgenderism as something so ambiguous and so like sort of
Yes.
ineffable and
Yes.
also like abstract and circular, that it can encompass literally like any sort of manifestation of psychopathology, then just like the experience of being an adolescent, let alone somebody who has an adolescent with trauma, an adolescent with mental health issues,
Yeah.
they just tell you that being uncomfortable in your skin is indicative of gender dysphoria. That's literally just like being an
That's
adolescent.
right.
There's
That's
no
right.
way around it. And it's just, I definitely, yeah, I see myself as somebody who probably would have been encouraged at least to
Sure.
that as an explanation for my psychological distress.
All women on this channel, almost every single one write me and say, I was a tomboy or I was this and I would have almost every woman. It's crazy. And I'm like, yeah, that's because it's easy to manipulate a child's brain. You and I both know that. Whatever. That's why parenting is so important. A parent can mold their child into whatever they want. So when I see trans parents of trans kids, I'm like, you are the one who's making your kid trans. You think your 4-year-old is trans? You need to be like, literally, to me, that's child abuse. I will be very honest.
Yeah. And I wish that some people would face consequences commensurate with child abuse. It's really horrific, and some parents, I think, really were told by like pernicious doctors that they had to do it or their kid would kill themselves. And there are other parents who I think have like trans housing by proxy and are harming their children for attention. I think there's all kinds, and
that's right.
It's never too late. I know none of them are listening, but just in case they are, like it's never too late to do the right thing.
That's right.
Forgiveness is always helpful if you just admit that you're wrong, but like.
Well, because now you can't make a mistake, right? You're not allowed to change your mind. You're not allowed to change your political affiliation, especially in the LGBTQIA poo-poo community. You can't be a conservative, or you can't be there. It's such a structured environment. It goes against everything they try to preach: diversity, inclusivity, all of it. And I can't believe people can't. I just cannot believe people cannot see through the grift of that whole trans, queer, non-binary insanity.
Yeah, but you're kind of like me, I think, like in terms of just like being obsessed with the truth. Like when something is so like blatantly illogical, it just kind of drives me crazy until people admit it. It drives me insane.
I have no problem with people making a mistake. I have no problem with that. What I have a problem with is when you keep going and instead of just saying, whoops, you know what? Actually, you're right. I just lied, or I made a mistake, or I thought. Like, that is so powerful to actually own up to making a mistake. I can tell you, I used to believe in trans kids, Forrest. Many years ago, I was like, no, it's all about, and then I was like, what? People are like, dude, look at this. And I'm like, actually, I changed my mind. And so I just can't believe people, going back to the original part of this conversation, I just can't believe people, and anyone who's watching today or doesn't understand, I'm going to put a link to this article that she wrote in The Hill, and it will blow your mind. And if you were on the fence about it, you won't be on the fence about it anymore. And I beg of all of you to pass this on to as many people as you can. The more eyes we get on it, the more people start to see these women are suffering in the prison and no one cares about them. It's actually mind-blowing. This isn't a third world country where people are just like, you're in prison, lock it, whatever happens in there, we're turning. This is America, where we have to care about people. And if you really want people to be rehabilitated, which is what prison is supposed to be about, you're not rehabilitating. You are making it worse for these people, and they're going to be traumatized beyond belief, and they're not going to recover from this in any way, shape, or form.
No, they're not for it to be like a Swedish socialist prison. They're just asking to not be like locked in a cell with a
oh my God, good point.
I mean, some of these guys are getting taxpayer funded like electrolysis every week, like expensive.
Yeah. Wow.
Guy's getting coaching now. He's getting like vocal feminization.
Who's paying for that? Who's paying for that?
Massachusetts spends more per prisoner than any state in the country. It spends twice what the second highest spender per person spends. So it's like exponentially. It has a smaller number of prisoners in the female prison, but regardless, like it's distributed over all of the prisons, and they are spending a lot of money. I've been trying to figure out how much money is being spent by the taxpayer, but it's really hard to get. For me, it's been really hard.
But don't we as citizens, aren't we allowed to see the money that is being our money? That's our money. Aren't we allowed to?
Any information requests, and they just don't.
No, they're gonna keep doing that until they have to give it to you. But that's why your work is so important for us. Please support her. Her X link is in there, and if you have any more, and I put some other links in the thing, but really support Forrest. And if you have anything for her, reach out to her or help her however you can to just keeping this particular story. I know you do other stories, I love all your stuff, but this particular story really sits with me because of being a transsexual, as well as caring about women's rights. And it's just not fair. It's not fair in any way, shape, or form. And I have a lot of empathy for these women, and for the way this is turning out is just mind-blowing to me. So do you have anything you want to end with here?
I mean, like you said, don't forget. It's really easy to forget that this is happening because we're not stuck in there. Uh, and I guess the other thing I would say is just like I know that there are social consequences and professional consequences and financial consequences and all these consequences associated with just not lying about this. But the longer we lie about it, like the longer it goes on, the harder it gets to walk back. And eventually we will get to a place, I am confident, where we look back and we think this all, I mean, like the medicalization of children, worse than the lobotomy, what we did to incarcerated women, one of the most scandalous human rights abuses in our history. But I think it will be a long time, and I want to minimize how long it takes because I'm tired of everyone hating me, I guess. And I'm tired of having to think about awful things all the time. And I will. I'm not going to drop it. But yeah, just tell the truth. I mean, to the best of your ability. That's what I would say.
They only hate you because you're telling it. I get hate too, so that's why us people who get hated, we always find each other in this sea of hate. But hate is not always a bad thing. It means you're doing the right thing because they want to shut you up. But don't ever shut up for us. Please don't ever, ever shut up. And I won't shut up. And I guarantee you, we will find that peak there and expose all of these bad people. We used to want to expose these bad. Journalism used to be about exposing. It's no long. It has a political motivation now. It's not even about journalism. You're a true journalist, and I appreciate it a lot.
Well, I really appreciate you having me on. It's been lovely to talk to you.
Thank you, friend. So with that, everybody, please like and get this to someone who needs to see it. And people are going to be mind blown. And I'll put the link in the description. And you guys have a great Saturday. And I'll see. And thank you again for supporting the channel. It means a lot to me. It's how we get these amazing guests. So everyone have a beautiful rest of your day. And I'll see you guys.